legally correct. We just do our due diligence in terms of how it was advertised. This wasn't even on the website.
Aye. We're good. Call to order today a special meeting for the Board of Aldermen for North Tuxel Beach. And what I need right now is an approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda with a change of removing the vote on the MSD today.
Second.
A second with the change.
Yes, second with S. Second to the S, to the agenda as amended
Okay.
by Alderman Meyer.
All discussion, all in favor?
I think just the discussion would be that we then try to notice a meeting,
Yes.
okay, within 10 days. That doesn't have to be in the motion, but I think the discussion would be, in order to get two of these in, because there might be some confusion today, that we would notice it so we can have a second meeting within 10 days.
That the town attorney is able to attend as well.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Can
I'm
you
not
hear us
amending
down
that,
there, Sharon?
that's just a discussion.
Okay. Okay, are we all in favor of that change?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to remove that municipal service district vote. And we're going to ask our town clerk to notice a meeting for 10 days out. So today's the 14th, so if we notice it for the 25th, okay, then we would still be able to have both of our votes in this month. That's fine. Okay, all right, so then the next item on the agenda is just to walk through the budget workshop. And I appreciate the department heads being here today as well, just in case anybody has any questions. So I'm going to open it up to the board. Would you like to kind of go tab by tab through it and
Yeah.
ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well then we're gonna start. Caitlin's on the hot seat. So the first one we have here is the very first page, which is, I guess, the governing board, admins, planning department inspections. It's your
Can we start with revenues?
review. Go
Can we
ahead.
start with revenues, please?
We can.
Fine.
Yeah. Fund 10 revenues, sorry.
Okay, and we'll come back to this one. Do you have specific questions, Alderman Grant?
Just some questions about what your assumptions are. Okay. When I looked at on the revenue side, I mean, basically all we have is, can you walk us through, it's a 5.45% increase in total revenues. And I think that you had, when I looked at ad valorem, you had like the ad valorem tax flat. Why don't you just walk through your assumptions on revenues? That's the best way to do it. In terms of whether you build in a tax increase or not, and what your assumptions are.
Sure. So the paper you have in front of you is the tax levy as is, so the 41 cents. So you'll notice if you've looked at the entire spreadsheet that I sent you guys last 2 weeks ago or so, the deficiency that's represented. So we could obviously change the tax levy to assist in this deficiency. So I think that's the first thing I would point out, is that the levy is the same as it is currently. We increased our county tourism grant by $125,000. We have word that they approved, the county has approved us for a little over $153,000, which were the 2 grants that Mr. Gilbride applied for. So that's good news. And so the 125 is the tourism grant, and the other 25,000 is in a separate grant line item further down. There were 2 separate grants, so that's why they are separated. I know that has been a topic in the past, so we might have questions on that specific one. But we decreased the interest income. We were hopeful that we would have high revenues like we had past years. This year at that 75,000 mark, but unfortunately, it's just not come up at all since COVID has hit. So I think we brought in a little over $12,000 year to date. So we are hoping that it'll increase a little bit. So we left it at 15 for next year. The P&L insurance proceeds, that's 79,000. We carried that over again. That is the remaining amount we are to receive from insurance for the town hall, and we cannot receive that until the work is completed. So once that's completed, then we can submit for that final check to come in. And then, let's see, we increased our local option sales and use tax by 20% based on current revenues and guidance from the LGC. Let's see, we increased the parking revenues a little bit here. So Mr. Gilbride and I have majority of the parking revenues going into Fund 30, specific for the federal project, which was the original intent for those revenues. We increased this portion because we left the revenues that we originally were receiving from the north end in Fund 10. So that also is increasing a little bit. So we bumped that up there. With that comes a little bit of a decrease in the officer citations and court fees. We certainly could break that out a little more in terms of the citations, but when we receive that money from auto, it's all coming in one big lump sum. So, but we could break that out. Yes.
Yeah, just before you leave that one, when we talked about the 100 versus 150 on the parking stuff, look below it, you've got parking code enforcement fees. Okay. Our paid parking thing is also generating a fair amount of parking fines. Did we make any assumptions out of that, or we just say that we think we're going to get 500,000 in parking revenues? And then
We made the total lump sum number. I think we've increased it to, Chief and I went through it and bumped it up to 550, I think was our total. I'll have to go back and look at the funding.
okay, I just want to make sure, because I think that taking a look at what happened this year in terms of parking fines, probably not going to be true next year. We'll figure out that they're getting fined.
Yes, yes.
Unless we get a whole new project.
Unless we get new people coming.
So just to be clear, the paid parking income line includes the fines that are levied by auto. That's
Yes.
everything from auto goes in that line, right?
That's my
Between this line and then there's a line in Fund 30 as well. So this specific 600. Okay, thank you, Chief. So this line is specific to the north end revenues, which we were
Just that
receiving
one parking lot.
previous
Okay.
to auto coming in. So we said we need money in Fund 10. We're going to leave what was there already there and then move the new revenues into the Fund 30 for the federal
Okay,
project.
that was my question.
Okay. Any other questions on that
Yes,
part?
I have questions now.
Okay.
Go back to the top. I didn't understand why the ad valorem tax of the current year decreased when we have all these new houses being built, surely coming online, and surely people have restored their houses from Florence, so those properties should be back online as far as taxes go. Why did you predict a slight decrease?
Well, I gave you guys the tax levy spreadsheet as well, so this might be a good time to refer you to that. The levy did increase by 2% from last year. And you'll remember last year where I made the mistake where we originally had the percentage broken out 75% in Fund 10 and 25% in Fund 30. Then I realized that we could not do that because we had to have the 14 cents for the LGC agreement in Fund 30. So then we switched it back from the 65 to the 35. So this is a little bit of a clerical error, unfortunately,
Okay,
that this current fiscal year's number, everything is correct. The number is just wrong
Okay.
on this side. So the estimated revenues are accurate. in
Okay.
terms of that.
I'd just like to comment on the county tourism grant, although thanks to Manager Gilbride did put in requests. At this point, it's still a work in progress. And one thing that we've heard subsequently is that the county may not pay for the, cover the leases that we've been paying for the Jeffries lots because now we're collecting paid parking. So just be aware that that 125 could possibly drop 50,000 or so. That's all.
I believe that the county is, while that was one of the itemized things that the county approved, we could use it toward, we can use those funds towards any beach-related tourism activity. So, and I know that the county manager left the door open for us to also talk about beach access 4 and the dunes and that those funds going towards the repairing of those dunes. So it doesn't have to be specific for the things that he originally listed out, was my understanding.
Right, I didn't get the impression they're going to reduce that amount. I know
Right.
That's the amount we've gotten. It's
Okay.
just what we submit.
So we'll have
If
to-
you take a look at it for me, in the past, we've gotten 0.
Right, and in talking to a couple of the aldermen, there's supposedly some possibility of us getting some more.
That she said that in her email, that it was open, and we just have to be able to present what our tourism needs are.
And then just one quick follow-up. And I think I know the reason behind this, but I think we need to make sure we communicate this to the people in the town. We're not putting the COs program in this year for the simple reason that we are about to plant a ton of COs every place that we've had sand, including down to 5. That's the
Yes.
reason, right? So we want to make sure we're not telling people there's not going to be COs going in. There's going to be a lot more COs going in this year, okay, in this budget than ever before.
That's true.
Because of the FEMA project.
So before we move away from the tourism grant, my understanding then is that the county in discussions has an expectation that we're going to use that money to fix BA4 or not.
It was a part of the conversation with the county manager, I think leaving the door open for that possibility and for that discussion. That's what I understand.
And we are scheduling a follow-on meeting with them in person to talk
Because,
about that.
because from what Alderman Johnson's briefed us at the June meeting, the cost for the repair of BA4 far exceeds this amount.
Understand?
And honestly, I feel like they ought to be paying for that above and beyond this grant here, since it's air access.
Yeah, most definitely. That's our position.
But I also believe that's why they made it an open-ended. We have to go and talk with them about our needs, or we're not going to get anything.
I just
So-
wanted, for the purpose of this discussion, I wanted to hear, I'm glad you said that, Mike, because, you know, otherwise, this amount really doesn't do anything for the town because it goes to repair the county's beach access. I just want that point out there.
Kind of giving a gift to themselves.
But also in the meeting, though, they thought the cost to do that was about $60,000. So they're not looking at it as we're shorting you. We're looking at it, they're looking at it as we're giving you 120,000. That doesn't mean, and that's why I think that she left it open, because their understanding was it was 50 to 60,000.
Because that's the estimate we had at the time.
So understand, they're not looking at it, everybody, you know, it's a communication issue.
And it's a work in progress.
If we can, yeah, if we can ever get this meeting scheduled with the county, then we can go through all these
Absolutely.
items that we just discussed,
Yep.
because they're definitely on our agenda.
So, let's see. I'm looking for any big ticket items that jump out at.
Garbage collection fees is because the fees to us are going up, right?
That's correct. The rates cut, we're gonna be increasing those rates this year. So that figure goes up, but the expense, it's money in, money out. So it's a wash as far as that's concerned. And let's
Then
see.
just one other quick one. I saw the sale of the Leo, it's the sale of the fixed assets. Is that the 2 properties that we approved for sale?
No,
Because isn't there
that's,
$20,000? Didn't we just approve 20,000?
Where
Two
did you see
sales
that?
at 1010.
Oh, Lisa,
that's
that's-
true. And
Yeah,
that's
but
gonna
that's
be
this year.
this fiscal year.
I'm looking at revenues for next year. It's 20.
That's correct. Yeah, the sale of fixed assets are vehicles, any smaller types of capital assets that we have, anything over the 5,000 or less dollar amount, that's going to go into that line item. So the property sales are not reflected here. That will hit this fiscal year, assuming we receive those funds this fiscal year.
Okay.
The LESO assets, those have been in the consent agenda the past few meetings. The police department has a surplus program that they operate with the base. And so they're able to obtain free assets, but part of that, the stipulations of the program is when they sell the items after X amount of time, that the revenues are separated and they go back specifically for the police department. So there's a revenue line item, and then there's also an expense line item in the police department for those sales. Are there any other questions on the revenue side that jumped out at you
I
guys?
got one more. I want to just throw that up. We talked earlier about the paid parking income in here, which I understand is for the paid parking thing, but correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding, my expectation all along is when we went to paid parking and all the paid parking revenue was going to go on 30. Was that right or wrong? Because this is my thing.
That's right.
I think we initially had that conversation, but I thought I just heard Caitlin also say that because there was a shortage in the general fund, that they are proposing that we leave the north end parking revenue for that one lot.
We can certainly change it. It is y'all's decision. There was never clear direction given in terms of how the revenues were. So we kept what was and added the new portion to the Fund 30.
So carrying him a step further. It's supposed to go in Fund 30, but we put it in Fund 10 to offset a shortage. We're back to the old game that I know Mike Benson has talked about years past, about using the beach fund to balance the general fund.
I would say we're not doing that because it's all of the new parkings that we have from auto are going to Fund 30. Anything existing we've left in Fund 10. So not necessarily fixing a shortfall, but more so just leaving what was there already there.
So what you're saying is, before we did auto, the funds from the paid parking in the north end were going into Fund 10.
That's correct.
So all you try to do is maintain that, and then the other money coming in to put it 30.
That's correct.
I'm not sure I even understood that the stuff was going in from the north into 10.
I didn't know. If I knew that, I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I kind of agree with Alderman Leonard. He talked about paid parking for the beach on 30, but given the pretty significant deficit in the general budget for this year, maybe we can leave it as, I don't know, 100,000.
Well, why don't we get through the rest of it and then we can come back to that conversation.
And we can always, another point I would like to make is deciding when you guys decide what we do with the federal project, we either do it or we not. If we don't do it, then we have the total parking revenues that we could then, you guys could decide how you want to split that up, whether that's Fund 10, the capital improvements fund, and also the beach fund as well. So it's another.
It's a legal question for you, and Brian's not here. I understand that, but let's put aside the federal project. If we implement paid parking, I thought that had to go for beach nourishment and stuff, or is that just because we were doing the park, because we were doing the project? So as long as there's no, I'm fine with what you just said, as long as it's not, we don't have any prohibitions, or it was on-street parking we had used for.
On-street parking had to go into the general fund and parking in lots was able to go into the beach fund is how I remember him describing that to us.
I've got a question too. The Fund 30 is the beach fund, and that, am I right? Okay, and that has to go to pay our USDA, right?
Right.
So, I mean,
We're under direction from the LGC to get paid off
right,
earlier than the USDA stipulated terms of anyway.
Next to the fund, we were next to the fund. Or anything over 5 million that's in that fund has to be used to pay off the USDA loan too. There's commitments.
Right.
From the board.
Right.
You know,
Not with money.
I know we want to keep moving, but I want to say this now. Probably back in 2013 or 14, I was the guy that made the motion to increase the tax rate for the beach fund to 15 cents a hundred. Look at the history of the beach fund at 15 cents a hundred. It's not been funding the beach. It's been going to make up shortages in the general fund. And I'm just really feeling like if our general fund is robust enough, the tax rate we have now to handle the things in the general fund, the expenses in the general fund. And that doesn't speak to the beach fund, that speaks to our tax rate.
Property tax
Okay?
rate.
Or
And,
tax
and,
elsewhere.
you know, we need to get somewhere soon when we're fixing this, so that the beach fund money stays in the beach fund.
We,
And including that 150,000 for the North End parking. I think it belongs to the beach fund. We've been advertising all along. Every time we get a complaint from somebody across the bridge about, why do I have to pay to park? What do we tell them? What do we tell them? We tell them because you have to pay to maintain the beach just like the rest of us. That's what we tell them. And that's what I tell them. So at some point, you gotta fix it. There's something to fix. And it's just not a reflection on you by any means, okay? It's sort of a policy thing.
and the 14 cents has been delegated to Fund 30 and has stayed there. And then the past couple years, 2 years that I've been here, it has not been transferring to cover anything with the general fund. I'm not going to speak to what was done previous to me, but from what I've seen, that has not been the case.
Let me just add something to that. I think one of the things is, and I know we've had this discussion up here a lot, USDA fund handcuffs us in a lot of ways. Okay, the money that what is it, 14 cents in property taxes that has to go against that is not because we're required to take those property taxes and put it in the beach fund. It's because the commitment was made by previous boards to put that money in there. So I agree with what Tom had said. I think that we figure out, once we get that, small word, albatross off our back, okay, then I think we need to look at the right way to fund different things and move money around, because you can make a contrary argument on the 14 cents that should have been in Fund 10 all along. Okay, we wouldn't have this deficit in Fund 10, right? But we're not using it for new beach projects. We're using it to pay off existing beach projects. And I think that's the problem. Is that should have been paid off. In my opinion, we should have raised taxes back then. We should have paid it off in a 5 or 6 year period, and then we wouldn't have this on. And so I think, to Tom's point, it's good planning for what we're going to do with the money, and making sure we don't make commitments that hamstring us going forward. So,
And I know all of this slows down the process of trying to get through this. These are good discussions for those of us up here who are trying to chart the course ahead, chart the way ahead. And there are, I think, discussions that are necessary to have as we go through this process. When we have all this in front of us, we can go down line by line. It's a lot easier than that.
Anything else on the revenues?
No, just one thing. Getting on the tax levy, you got 41 cents and you got split 65-35. So does that split reflect how many pennies of the 0.41 cents in the general rate is for the beach fund?
So that's 14 cents for the
14 cents.
35%.
And it used to be 15 cents back in the day, but when the county reevaluated the tax, we stayed revenue neutral, so it dropped back a penny to 14 cents. So we're already short a penny if you don't consider that we did that reevaluation adjustment. So if that's 14 cents, then that automatically added a penny to the general fund. Then, correct? So instead of being 26.15, it's 27.14, correct? 20.27 pennies are going into the general fund.
Yes, yes.
So we've
clarification. I just don't remember. Is our commitment on the USDA loan to a cents or percentage? Because when we're doing the 65-35, that's a percentage. 15 cents is a fixed number. they're close. So if you could give us some background on that. 'Cause I thought,
Well, I just did. I would come back to Alderman Leonard's point. He said he made the motion to raise the tax to 0.15 pennies back into, what, 15, okay? To 14. And so we did it. But then when the county reevaluated about 4 years ago or 3 years ago, the board decided to do revenue neutral budget adjustment. So we took a penny out of the beach fund and put it in the general fund. Essentially what happened.
so I guess what I'm asking is, I'm saying we're gonna do this, so everybody doesn't have a heart attack. If we raise the 40 cents to 50 cents, the commitment we have to the USDA loan is 15 cents, not 35%.
That's how I've understood it.
I
And talking
can't
with the
answer that.
Carters.
That's where I was going with this.
I
Because it's
can't
like,
answer that. We know what the USDA loan, the parameters of that loan, was it based on the fact that our beach fund was 15 pennies?
And I think it was
Alderman
more
Leonard, you know
based
that?
on,
I can't remember.
Yeah, I would, that's kind of a detail. I don't think you really have to dig down pretty deep to find that.
sorry to keep butting
you
in.
understand what I'm asking though, because if we do any kind of property tax increase and you're trying to raise money in Fund 10, and you've got to get 35% of any increase to Fund 30, which is not necessarily a bad thing, then we're not going to get the money we need in 10.
All right, let's let Caitlin answer.
But
She's been trying to answer.
Sorry, it's the 14 cents. And that was not necessarily with the USDA, but it was with the LGC agreement. And then that was setting us up to pay it off within the 11 years. So if we were to raise taxes, as long as we had the 14 cents in the beach fund or the USDA loan, then in theory, you could increase
that was my question.
Fund 10.
So it's raising the same amount of money with 14 cents that we were raising with 15 before they did the property tax adjustment.
Okay.
Anything else on
Thank you.
revenues? We're gonna come back to this because of my note on paid parking anyway. I just think we need to get through the expenses. Now, I didn't see in here a revenue sheet for the beach fund.
It is in there near the back. It's on like the, and I meant to add page
Oh.
numbers, and I'm sorry.
No, that's
I
okay.
said that last time, but I didn't.
Oh, I see it in the very, I got it.
Yeah.
Stay on the general fund.
Okay. All right, so do we want to move on to expenses for the general fund? Okay, so the first one is the governing body. Any changes here? We did donations to other agencies. I know the one change there was for the Economic Development Committee. We checked with the other beach towns and they had lowered their donation to I think it was 1,000, right? Chamber, to the chamber, so that we followed suit with that. Any other questions?
Yeah, I would recommend that we keep the salaries for the governing body at the current rate.
Just gonna ask what that, that's what the first line. I don't.
That's the first
Right,
one.
so the proposed budget reinstates the previous board salaries, and we had some discussion on that at the last meeting. And I believe some of the discussion, or most of the discussion was when you limit the board salaries, we're not able to make the donations that we would like to make. And that's really just a personal preference. So I understand your point, Mayor Pro Tem, but I also feel like if your salary is reestablished to what it was previously, you could always donate those funds to several agencies if you don't feel that they're deserved. But if you look at how much time you're also putting in as it relates to things like this federal project, it's not much of a difference. It's not enough, I know, right? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so the back history on why those salaries were raised a number of years ago was the intent was that it would allow those who felt that it would help issues with the town to make political contributions at the federal and state levels. That was the whole point behind it. So that when you go and you talk to somebody up in Raleigh or Washington, you could also make a contribution to the political campaign, and maybe they might help the town a little bit more than they might otherwise be inclined to help the town with something. And I know for a fact that I used some of the money for that. And I know that some of the previous board members did so as well. I'll just throw that out there.
The town does have a federal lobbyist and a state lobbyist that we contribute to through the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission. And so we do have money from our budget going into lobbying efforts. And we have very good relationships with our congressional delegation, both federal and state level. And we're going to be talking to those people at the federal level this week during the Shoreline Protection Commission meetings with the congressional delegation. I can't say what I want to say in public because I think we have a real issue with the comments that were just made about donations. So I called several other towns and the discussion I had in the past with Surf City, which I brought before this committee, Topsail Beach, they're both paying their aldermen $500 a month. I talked to people in Holden Beach this morning, and they have a $1.3 billion tax base and a tax levy of 0.2 cents. They pay their board members $100 a month, okay? I didn't get the numbers from Emerald Isle or Oak Island. I just can't see us taking money as aldermen, then making donations with it. It scares me. It really scares me.
Well, a lot of the, I understand what you're saying about the Shoreline Protection Committee as well, but Alderman Leonard and I have had meetings with several public officials that aren't connected through the Shoreline Protection Committee. So back to his point, I know specifically some of them were looking for some type of campaign donations just because they spend a lot of time assisting North Topsail Beach with some of our current issues. So I'm certainly not disagreeing with your comments by any means, but I think the point of this work session was to be able to have discussion so we can provide direction and then be able to vote next session.
I'll follow up to Mike's comment. Tomorrow, the mayor and I are on our virtual meeting with our elected officials in Washington. We're going to ask our Senate representatives why this year we don't have a companion Cobra bill like we did last year. Keeping in mind last year was also an election year. And deep down, I think I know why we don't, and it has very little to do with this board. But at the same time, when we ask those questions, I am fully prepared to remind both of our Senate staffs or the senators, if they're there, that I donated to their campaigns last year. And if we decide to raise their salaries, and Alderman doesn't want to take it, he doesn't have to take it. A number of years ago, we had an alderman who didn't take any money. He turned back in his salary. So it's on you. But again, I intend to remind both of our senators or their staffs, whoever's on the phone tomorrow or whoever's on the Zoom meeting, I donated to your campaigns.
Yes, sir.
Two comments. One, I do not use any funds that come from this town to make my political, I do not use any money that comes from this town to make my political donations. Those are on my behalf. And yes, I make substantial political contributions, and I have for years. And I do not use any town money. There is no connection back. Second thing is, with respect to whether we should raise it or not, my biggest issue in this whole thing is if we end up having to do a tax increase for the people in the town, I really don't like the idea of raising my compensation. And I would personally turn it down rather than having, raising it during the time we're having to raise taxes for everybody else. Recognizing that I do pay property taxes with that too. So it's a double hit. So it's just that's my biggest concern is I think we're looking at deficits and stuff. If we're looking at property taxes like we are, I have a concern about increasing our conflict. And I recognize that the amount of time that the people up here have spent, I know I have on this stuff. And, you know, if it's supposed to be an hourly compensation, then I'm in the wrong seat. So anyway, that's.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you. I strongly agree with you.
And I agree with those points as well.
All right, beat that horse to death, can.
Well, and what I was, I'm gonna put it as, again, I'm gonna put it as a follow-up and we'll have that on our parking lot, so we don't end the meeting without coming to some type of direction for staff. Okay,
Great.
anything else on that?
Just a question, I'm assuming $100,000 is for the financial consultant.
That's true for the
That's fine.
financial consultant.
That, in my opinion, is money very well spent.
No,
Also, Brian.
We will
Eads is in
save
that
more
bucket.
than we'll spend on that. So
Yes.
particularly looking at Mayor, what he's talked about in terms of how we even fund the FEMA. stuff,
Exactly.
We've got to be able to figure out how we're going to fund our FEMA.
Mhm.
So no problem with that at all.
Okay, the next one would be administration. Any questions on this one? This one actually came down.
The obvious question is salary. Is we lost somebody to higher salary?
We had a staffing change where we have Carrie, who's our administration person at the front desk. We've moved her request and discussion with Mr. Gilbride to the police department.
All right,
So
it's-
their
it's-
salary's
all
gone
right,
up.
So it's not elimination of salary, it's a moving.
That's correct.
I don't have anything on here. Did any board member? All right. Election fees, this is just standard because there's an election this year.
Yes, this is based on last year's. It's just an estimate. The Board of Elections, they said that's a good number to go off of.
Okay. This is planning. Any questions on this one? Yes, sir.
We had talked about funding a planning assistant. Deb. It's not in here, it needs to be.
I had actually, and I'll answer that question. I know Deb and I had spoke about either a part-time person or some outside services for some of the large projects that come up during the year. So my assumption would be that whatever Deb would like is in here. Is that not the case?
No, I would prefer not to have a part-time planning assistant because inevitably their part-time schedule does not facilitate any deadlines that I might have. If we're gonna do an assistant, then it needs to be full-time. And it needs to be a planner.
But I guess my question, Deb, we did talk before the budgets were due, and you said you were gonna give it a little bit of thought. So to Alderman Leonard's point, I don't see anything in here. Was that because you felt that it's sufficient? Or are you asking? for more?
I'll be honest with you, I had not really had a lot of time to think about it with what all is on, all the duties and deadlines that I've been dealing with. But I mean, if you want to put a full-time planner in there, that would be great. And if you don't, then we certainly need to start budgeting for major projects. And as you recall, you may recall that I had requested that the UDO update be included in the budget, and it was not.
Mr. Gilbride and I had talked about that, and we had said that when that came, that we would do an amendment and move money around. Because I think it was at the last minute last year that we had the UD, it was like the $5,000 mark. And so we said we were gonna move money around. And I don't think I've seen that come through. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's relatively, right now they're going, the last quote that I got was between $7,000 and $13,000 for a town our size.
Yes, sir.
I respectfully disagree. One is I don't think it's the Alderman's job to be asking people to put in. I think that goes to the town manager, the acting town manager to make a recommendation. Second thing is we're talking about a planner that's going to add 1 cent to the town's property tax permanently. And if there's an issue about things getting done or about those type of things, then we need to take a look at that, a serious thing before we add. We're already showing a deficit for the year. This would almost double the deficit by the time you put salary and everything else in it. And again, I would relate this back to you know, it's the chief, he's the person. If he feels that it's necessary, and he wants to come back and make a presentation as to why it's necessary or why it's not necessary, to me, that's where the recommendation is going to come from. I don't like the idea, again, having run a number of businesses and going back to department heads and having the board ask people what those numbers are. So it's just a process issue.
Yeah, I kind of agree. If it's a personnel situation, and the recommendation should really come from the town manager.
Okay, so
After
I seem to
appropriate
recall
research.
months ago in a meeting that the mayor made mention that we would look at potentially hiring an assistant.
that's why I did talk
And
with Deb.
so, I mean, when we get, as we go down this path, let's remember how the groundwork was laid initially on why we're going to her. I don't have a problem at all with going to the manager. And you're right, Shannon Manwise is correct. She works for him. He works for us. But where this started was
Where
in a
this,
conversation.
where this started, I believe, was one of the previous budget meetings, which is why I did go to Deb and also Mr. Gilbride at the time. And I just said, please make sure whatever you need is in there. I don't believe it's the board's job to try and guess which way would be better, whether we consult out or whether we have additional help. That's something that staff has to figure out.
Well,
So,
remember, my bias on these things is I get very nervous if Deb needs help in this, whether it's short term or long term. Again, this is the way we run our business too. Is you go to an independent contractor or a contract person, it's easy to stop the contract. You hire somebody that's a permanent expense.
Right.
And I think we all agree with everything going on in this town right now, there's a lot of new stuff going on, the building is out of control, all those type of things. But it's also been my experience that when something becomes in there, it's very hard. I've done both. It's very hard to lay people off. It's very easy to just not renew a contract.
so I put down here that I'm gonna ask the town manager and the planning director to get together and just figure out what, if any recommendation needs to go in.
Okay, that's fine.
I should come back
No, I
to it.
completely agree with that.
Can I make one comment?
Yes, ma'am.
And certainly get together with them. We had no way of predicting last year, this hot market, number one. And I don't think any of us either expected the loss or wanted to expect the loss of the town manager. There've been a number of external factors that have kind of got us where we are today. Hopefully, the market will slow down. Hopefully, staffing will.
Don't say that. Saying that.
After the rebound, yeah.
Hopefully it'll come to a screeching halt where that we can catch our breath. But seriously, there's so many external factors that we don't know, and so there are several items that, you know, not just legislatively but legally have to be addressed. I will continue to do my best on those, and that's the end of my statement.
All right, so I took that as a follow-up for the. All right, the next one is inspections. Jimmy's not here to perform this, so,
He stepped out this earlier.
and I believe we talked about the increase in this one last time. Insurance and the orbit match, that's something that's just automatic, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
401k is automatic. The training, I believe, had to relate to the new software.
The software portion, half of that is under contracted services, number 45.
Okay.
They split inspections and planning, split
Split
the
that.
$9,000 annual fee for the software, which is live soon,
Hopefully.
hopefully soon.
Just can I ask a fundamental question? What are our assumptions for pay increases for town employees? Because everything's built, I mean, when I see something going up, and I have no problem with giving people raises, that's not the issue. Can you get, because whenever you look at that top line, if it moves, it's like, well, do we add people or was it just an increase?
Right. So per Mr. Gilbride's direction and based on our conversation at the first workshop,
Right.
the salary line items across the departments are including a 2% COLA and a 3% merit.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. The specific to inspections, that's also including because Jimmy has expressed he's retiring. So that's expressing, or that's gonna be double paying an inspector for a
Yep,
couple while there's
very good.
crossover, and then someone else for the
And
remainder.
I think given what we're seeing with inflation right now, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. We already saw more than that last month. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public buildings. The furniture is for town hall. And actually, grounds have come down. Any questions on this one?
Yes, the capital outlay, the 610,000, that is part of the restoration for town hall.
That's true.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
What part of that, and the contract is for like $1 million or more?
1.1. Yes, 1.1.
Yeah, what part have we paid towards that $1 million? And does this 610 pay off the construction contract?
That would pay off the construction contract. Back when we originally started looking at these numbers, we broke it up half this fiscal year, half next. Well, ideally, we were hoping we could do it with $600,000, but that was not the case. And this is not up to date. This says 176,000, but I know we just paid 140,000, and I think we had one prior to that as well. So I think we're over I think we're around the 400,000 range that we've paid to date. I should have brought that with me. I apologize. But I am expecting at least one more invoice this fiscal year, which would get us about around that 600,000 mark for this year. Leaving it.
And did the insurer of the building already provide their loss check to the town?
No, once we complete the work, then we have to submit paperwork to the insurance company, and then that's when they'll submit that final check. And it's 79,000, and it's represented in the revenues.
It was how much?
79,000.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay. And so at that point, then we start debating with the insurance company as to what it costs to repair the town and what the building was insured for and how much they're.
Yes, and we had, if you'll remember, we had a third-party insurer come out a couple months ago. My dates are all wrong, but they came out a couple months ago, and we actually came out ahead in the way that they filed the claim. Apparently, the original adjuster double counted some square feet, and we came out on receiving more than what we would have, which is crazy. So we can definitely still inquire about receiving more funds, but from the work that we did previously, I think we're pretty much at what we're going to get. We should definitely look into it again.
You don't, I didn't hear the last part. So you don't think that we are going to get an increase in payment or in a loss from the insurer?
I don't think we'll receive any more funds, no, sir.
So we're going to be how short on the contract?
I think we total it was 380 something thousand that we were receiving back from insurance, and that included personal property.
Okay,
So unfortunately,
thank you.
yes, sir.
Two quickies. They can ask for grants from Golden Valley.
Golden Leaf.
Do we have anything in there for this? The second question is, not back to the county, I don't want to reopen that up. I think there was a discussion about them paying for a sign, an information sign, helping with that.
Yeah, that was part of that 153,000.
Right, but I mean, I thought that was one of the things that they didn't have a problem with, except for one of the aldermen said, unless it's to advertise their paper.
Now that's in a tourism grant. For the sign,
Okay,
town hall sign.
It is in a separate line item,
that's fine.
but it is in the grant reimbursements in the revenues, the sign, and it was for about $28,000. And then Golden Leaf, yes, we do have funds coming for that, and I believe it was around $60,000 for the town hall, and that was going to be for the hurricane windows and the roofing.
I thought that Dave said he was gonna ask for more from them or something, or maybe my memory's just not correct.
He said he was going to try for more.
That's fine, okay, that's fine.
I have a question still about the supplemental. I know that prices of building materials went way up. And is there a way where we can show,
More expensive.
yes, like all the sheetrock and all the whatever, this is what we thought it was gonna be, and this is what it was.
Right.
Even if they gave us a little more in square footage, that was their error, not ours. And, you know, if you want to subtract that out of whatever we could get, you know what I mean? I think it's still worth checking into because,
Don't get it.
right, I mean, if they did overpay us, then, and this watches, that's fine, but what if it didn't?
Right, that's true.
So I think there's direction from the staff to just follow up with the insurance company to see if there's any way to increase the payment back. And I know that this has already been done a couple times, but I would say the difference, I do agree with Alderman Meyer, if we attack it from the cost of materials alone,
Right.
maybe, you know, all they can say is yes or no.
And the other thing is, if you find out other payouts from the same insurance company for similar things, that they did more for them or covered more from them, you can go to the insurance board and say, I think we were treated unfairly because this happened here. And they don't like that.
Right.
So they are willing to step up and look at it again sometimes.
Okay, that's a good point.
Okay, let's move on, guys.
No, I have,
Yes, sir.
I have a new line item for building, public buildings. The line item would be capital improvements for the public safety building. And I'd like to put $291,960 on that line.
Is that an approximate?
277, you said?
I
No,
was teasing you. You said
291,960.
Thank you.
3 cents, 3 pennies.
That
To build public, to
does
be able
sound-
to start having money matured to be able to construct the public safety building.
Okay.
I will, want to tell you guys, and I put it in one of my memos. I can't remember if it's this month or the month previous, I'm sorry. But I've added a new fund and I've called it Fund 12. And that's gonna be, I've deemed it the capital projects fund.
So that's where that should go.
And I think that that's where that should go. I would suggest that's where the money for the future fire truck should go. Any type of the capital improvement funds, I would think to go there.
Just one.
I'm okay with the public safety center for this new construction, but the fire, that's an individual, that's an expense of that department rather than general to the town. So I think they should, I don't know, my thinking was that the fire department should have their own capital improvement line permanently to be able to replace fire engines when they need to be replaced. We know in 5 or 6 years, we're gonna have $1 million fire engine to replace, so that's my thing.
But
But
Mike
then
and
it
I-
wouldn't
Mike
be
and
in
I
a
talked
general
about
fund.
this bunch.
Right.
I would, yeah, a suggestion, I would tweak it this way. I would have, if you want to call it Fund 12, that's fine. And then I think you have to have a bucket in there for the public safety building so that people know this money is going for that and that line item is for that.
Yeah.
And if it's for fire equipment, they
That'd be
understand what it is that we need, X fire trucks over X years, and that's what we're funding. So that we're transparent, that everything doesn't go into one bucket, and it's like, then we change our mind and we say, oh, yeah, well, we raised your taxes for the public safety building, but we decided to use it, get rid of the car. Okay, and so I think Mike and I talked about doing some kind of delineation in there, so that to the extent that we decide to raise taxes or do something else to fund something like the public safety building, that people know where that bucket is.
Exactly, and we need to do this to kind of draw a line in the sand with the general fund that we have needs in the future we know about right now. We got to start collecting the funds so that we don't have to take such a big debt service when that item comes due. And in the past, we said, well, whatever's left over from the general fund, we can put, well, we've never had any money left over. We're always short.
So the only part I'm confused about, it sounds like we're good with Fund 12. We want to make sure we call out the public safety building in that fund, correct? Because it's new construction. But what are you asking Caitlin to possibly modify on this general fund building for public buildings? You're asking for, because a fire engine wouldn't go in here.
No, I didn't say that. What Alderman Grant just said, capital improvements would have two lines right now. One would be for the safety building and one would be for purchase of the new ladder truck for the fire department.
But
That
that's
would be
all in Fund
12.
12.
Fund
Okay.
12. Right,
Okay.
but set out so that when we are accounting for it, so that when Caitlin's looking at the money that comes in and we say, using Mike's 291,960.03, and that money comes in, it gets targeted so that we don't look at it and say, oh, look, there's another $300,000 we can use for something else.
You know, I'm good with that. I was just clarifying that both of those items are going
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Fund
that's
12.
fine.
Okay.
Wasn't there some talk about a separate fire tax?
Yeah,
possibly?
it's possibly in the future, not this budget year.
Yes, the county's looking at that.
Well, the county's looking at it, but I was thinking if we have to raise taxes because of the needs of the fire department, and we're gonna spend 300,000 next year or whatever it's gonna be, then maybe we designate a couple of cents that our fire or safety building, you know, necessarily goes to Fund 12. And then the homeowners understand that they're benefiting from Fund 12 directly.
And then I think to Alderman's point is, so my understanding from what our discussion was with the county, they are not planning on doing this for another year. Because I think it's a legislative issue, right? They can
It
do
sounded like they've been investigating this fire tax for a couple years. I had even asked our fire chief about it, and it hasn't come to fruition yet. So it sounded like what in our last Onslow County meeting, it's something they were going to investigate again, but it wasn't going to be this budget, this upcoming
Right,
budget year.
And isn't their fire fund gonna go to county fire issues rather than individual?
No, what she said was, once they adopt it, if it gets passed, then we as a municipality are also able to adopt it.
We can do our own.
We have to do our
They
own.
won't,
We can do our own anytime though, right?
No, I believe it was my impression, and sir, you were there too, that the county has to adopt it first.
but then they'll not be taxing us. We're allowed to have our own, because I think it's,
Okay.
they're looking at the unincorporated areas,
Okay.
exactly, because it's
That's
all the
what I was
volunteer
thinking.
firemen. They told us they had like a $3.5 million request this year, and they were giving like 300,000. The other thing to keep in mind that Mr. Benson, the point that he made, when he's putting the number in there, we're not assuming that we're gonna spend all that this year, because we're still in the design phase, and we're still later, you know, the answer is, instead of having to borrow first dollar on every project that we're looking at, the point is you build up a fund so that you don't have to do that.
Sure.
Particularly, right,
Right.
particularly as interest rates go up, it's gonna get much more difficult for us to raise. Exactly.
Anything else before we go on to town insurance?
The one thing I know we had, I'm sorry, about the emails for the equipment for
Town
the
hall.
town hall. I
Yep.
think with Liv here, I have not added it because we had that conversation after I sent this out to you guys.
And that was 30,000, I think.
That was 30,000, and Doug just stepped away, but that was the recommended figure by her. So I'm not sure the total amount of what that will be. We were hoping to get some of those items purchased this fiscal year, just to have some of it ready and to have installed. So when town
Right.
hall opens, we're walking into a finished space that we can
Sure.
have board meetings in and not an empty room. So it could increase, but we're hoping to get some of those this year.
Okay,
Questions on insurance? I just have one quick question.
yes.
See this happen. One of the complaints I've heard is that we did not take out enough insurance on the last bill.
And that,
Do you agree or believe that this will take care of making sure that we've got coverage? Not first dollar coverage, but adequate coverage. So if another hurricane comes through and we learn this thing, we're not 300,000 short.
my answer is yes. I've been talking with insurance and making sure that when the building is complete, that our
Fully.
coverage is gonna be fully covered, the rate's gonna increase. The amount is gonna increase of what we're covering.
Well,
Am I
Is
wording
it
that right?
actual replacement cost then?
Yes.
I think part of what happened this year with the hurricane is a lot of the damage was considered wind-driven rain. And unless we have that separate caveat on our policy, none of the damage is covered.
It's actually, it's a
considered.
separate policy.
It is.
Right, and we have and the separate policy is very expensive for what it is.
Yeah,
I
because
know
I'm
we
only
were
seeing
looking
flood
at,
and
we were
liability.
looking at getting, wind-driven rain at the condos, and it was 600,000 for $1 million worth of coverage. So I don't know, maybe we didn't have wind-driven rain, I don't know.
I'd have to review the policy
Would
at
you
that
mind,
time.
would you mind just
You want a
sending,
breakdown?
letting us know? Yeah, like what is our,
Policies.
the deck pages even would be fine.
For this going into next year?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
And no offense, Mayor, given your background, I would appreciate if you would take a look at that. and make sure as well. I mean, all of us have insurance, but
I think we just got them.
All right, moving on. Police separation allowance. I don't think we can really have any comments on this. That's it. Okay. I'm on to the police general budget. I did increase by this much before you came, town manager.
It had.
Okay.
Actually, that was the second revision of it, so it went down.
Okay,
We did pick up one salary in here, that was Terry,
that's right.
and Mr. Gilbride wanted to put some more in for the beach patrol, talking about maybe some interns this year.
Okay.
There are a couple cars down
So is the overtime, is that beach?
there. We pulled the overtime out. We used to just put the overtime in the salary.
Yeah, oh, you just labeled it
And
separately
we
then.
just, never, in all the departments, we pulled it out this year.
Okay.
So it'll show seven.
No question on salaries. How many new positions are you asking for?
I didn't ask you.
Any? So this is a 2% COLA difference?
It's, and also
That's-
very
They
salary.
stuck overtime.
Oh.
That's why the salary was lower on that.
But in
Okay,
addition
I
to
got it
the
now.
COLA and the merit, that
Yes.
just, that bumped it up.
I think the beach patrol idea is great. We had it several years ago, and it's just a really good way for the town to let the know visitors and property owners that, there's somebody there for them, talk to them, so forth and so on, and be able to call if there is an emergency. It's just a really good, and we get college students to do it, interns. So it's a learning experience for them, and it's a great PR for the town.
I'm good on police. Does anybody have any comments other than what Mayor Pro Tem said? Okay. Public Works. Went down. Good job,
Yeah.
Scott.
All right.
appreciate you taking a pay cut though.
And do what we can.
Is there anything specific on here, Scott, you need to call out for us that from the last time we saw it? Did you make any big changes?
Scott, just a quick question. So the part-time salaries, is that like seasonal stuff? Is that what it is?
No, we had a part-time person already, and we actually had another position come up. So what we have is two part-time people waiting for one part-time person to retire to make it a full-time.
Okay, we're there.
And that's-
Our part-timer that wants to retire is holding on for dear life.
And we just broke that out this year. Those figures are currently in the salary line item. We just broke them out this
Okay.
year.
All right, next. We good? All right, public streets. No equipment maintenance and repair this time? Mm-mm. What about the old equipment that you have? You don't think you need anything in there?
only thing I'm trying to get is a different loader. I'm trying to get a new loader.
But do we need to reflect that in here, or is it in here?
Mr. Gilbride made the call to not include that in here. A brand new loader was gonna be $160,000, so we directed Scott to start looking for if there are any type of used options.
Okay.
So it's on the, and I think he said that we could maybe make it another year with the one we had.
But we're gonna try.
We're gonna try.
I guess that was my only question is, would you feel more comfortable if you had something in the budget for maintenance and repair? Yeah.
And I think the loader would that not live in something other than streets? 'Cause I think we tried to clean up, Scott's kind of over several departments
Yeah, but
on
maybe it's in
paper.
public
So it's
works.
like streets, recreation, several.
You do have stuff in public works for maintenance and repairs. Do you think it's over there?
I think we increased that one, if I remember.
And I thought that Dave said that he was relying on the police chief to get us a free loader.
He did.
Oh, yeah. Get a chair.
So Mr. Town Manager,
It'll be great.
can you get on the police chief, please?
Get on
All right, sanitation, this is really nothing that we have control over, it's pass through. Recreation, we got our snowflakes.
Yay.
Well, recreation, I thought we were gonna,
Yeah,
yeah,
They only got $1,500.
well, there's $1,500. For this year, I think that'll probably be okay because we don't know what we're doing yet for sure. And we're gonna save a lot of money with the equipment we have. And that's probably for this year. We may have to up it this year, but we'll keep an eye on it.
all right, fire. So they do have capital improvements in this one already, Mike, the 42.8.
And that was the payment they were making on the truck, but it paid off now, right?
Yes.
And we were gonna continue to put that in there to hold it, or you could put that in that fund 12.
So I would like to raise that amount to $97,320.01.
Raise it to what, Mike? I'm sorry. can you repeat that?
$97,320. That's 1% of the tax levy.
Would you put it in there like that, then move it at the end of the year to fund 12? That was-
Or should we just put it
I
in
think
Fund
it should
12?
go in the Fund 12 now.
I would say, yeah, put it in the fund.
Yeah, because you're gonna break that.
Along with that other,
And do you know, what are the assumptions? I mean, I'm looking at salaries and looking at salaries, which is up, and then overtime, so you're 840. So you're,
Remember, the overtime's not up, it's just broken out separately. Last year it was all combined.
yeah, but payroll's up 50,000.
And then they put the 3% and the 2% in
Right.
there.
So the 35 used to be up in the salaries.
Okay.
So they broke it out and then they added in the COLA and merit. Because I don't believe we have any new firefighters, right?
What I'm saying is that math doesn't make sense to me. If you put 35,000, you add it to 750, let's call that 790, right? Call it 800. 5% of 800, 840.
So you
Okay, I
think
guess
we're
I
light
think-
on the,
I just want to make sure we got
One
it
of those
covered.
is-
It's not changing the number of employees. is my point.
It's not. But you don't have a deputy fire chief instead of what he's got now.
That's fine. And then Caitlin, I'm assuming for employees, whatever, we're assuming 100% staffing for 100% of the time.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm good.
I'll double check that salary line item, make sure that is correct.
Right, because all I'm saying is if you look at total, if you combine salary and overtime this year, it's 840,000. Last year, it was 750,000. Okay, that's not 5%.
You're not, yeah, you don't have the COLA in there.
Well, but even if you have coal in there, trying to close, you're still about $50,000 off.
I'll double check it and I have a spreadsheet back in the office that has it all broken out, so I'll look at that and email you guys and let you
Right,
know.
I'm saying that would explain the bottom line, 100. it just it just doesn't look like, and it could be right. It's just, I'm saying, if last year's approved budget included all of the fire people we talked about, which I don't know, that's the first thing I think about. Because that, we might be short per person. Didn't we approve more firemen last year?
Last year.
Okay. So all I'm looking at is $750 with no overtime, $840 including overtime. $90,000.
Right.
20% of 800 is only $40,000.
Right.
So they changed that in July.
Huh?
For those other firemen they added.
So that was a budget exception, do you think? If that's the case, then it makes sense.
No, the three new additional positions are included in that 750. So, and I have to check the spreadsheet. I have
That's
to-
You
okay.
understand the math I'm going
Yes,
through in my
I
head?
do.
It just, it
Yeah.
looks like we're off 50 grand.
It does.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at it.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
thanks. That's right.
Planning board, we've got, no professional services this year, Deb?
I had asked for 500 each for the planning board and for the Board of Adjustment for training and books.
Okay, so under professional services, we need to put 500 back in?
No, we have the professional services was the Holland, I can't think of what it's called, the Holland.
All associates.
The Camelanies plan?
Yes, and so we were getting that done this year, and so then we upped the two boards to $1,000 each, which is both, those were both under the planning board expense. We could add another line item if that's preferred, so you have one planning board and one board of adjustments, but you said 1,000.
However you want to do it.
Okay,
As long as it's clear what that is.
okay, I'll add a new line item there, so it's one for planning board and one for board of adjustment. expense.
Thank you. Beach fund,
You already answered my question.
any questions on this one?
I have a little, just one question, and it's probably just on the 50/50 COs. I understand with planting COs wherever they got sand. That doesn't account for any of the other areas that might want to plant COs.
Right, but they'll be getting sand this November. So what we need to do as a board is make sure after that project's completed that they also get.
Okay. I know a lot of
No, you saw that.
homeowners buy 50/50 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right, that's the point.
The reimbursement program is always something we can revisit in the future, if that's something you as a board want to do.
I think this is the first year we've been reimbursed by FEMA that I know of for the plantings. So I think that's the only real difference. And every dune should be touched at some point between the current projects that just completed and the ones coming up this year. So eventually everybody's gonna have the rest, is they shouldn't have to go to an expense on their own this year.
Well, they won't be getting units in phase one. We're just getting beach. We're just G.
I understand that, but you don't have a dune to plant.
I know.
Yeah.
We were gonna plant behind to hold whatever's there still there. Because we get overwash.
Mhm.
Anyway. I didn't mean just stop the roof. I mean, anybody else.
I think, didn't Dave tell us the total? Like $1 million worth of planting?
It wasn't, I guess my only thing, we'd have to check, and I don't know because I don't know, so I'm just throwing this out there, Deb may know, actually, because Jimmy's not here, but where the sandbag revetment used to be or is underneath, the sand that's all blown around, not top three, but down further. I don't know if they can plant that or it would, right, so that's what
I
I'm,
don't think they can plant.
No.
We can't plant the sandbags if we had sand on them.
right, but what I'm saying, down in that area, it's hard to tell where the sandbags even are right now.
They can do sand fencing with a minor permit though.
Okay,
What did you find out about that?
That you can do sand fencing with a minor permit.
So each property owner has to get a minor permit?
I think we can do it all under one. I spoke with their new guy briefly Friday or Thursday. I think it's Thursday or Friday. I was trying to get ready for a planning board meeting. And he and Rob Brownlow and the training guy were headed to the north end, the revetment. I haven't heard back from them since they went up there to take a look at it. There were a number of items I asked for them to look at while we were here. I'll follow up with them.
So I'm sorry to diverge here, but if it's a minor use permit that we can get it for the whole revetment area.
Yeah, the
and we
revetment
have
engineer.
such- I'm sorry to digress you. We have such a big complicated revetment restoration process going on right now. I've asked the attorney for clarification, so I would prefer that the town planning director apply for the minor use permit to get.
We, at the
Same
special
thing.
meeting, though, we can't be discussing additional topics that aren't on the agenda, so we have to move on them. Sorry. Brian, would make you say that. Anything else on beach? Right. Contingency, of course, I'm a little bit stressed out that there's nothing in the contingency fund.
I thought as mayor, you're supposed to keep that.
Right, well, we don't need any hurricanes, that's for sure, but I'd like to revisit that one at the end too, because Tom, you've been on the board a long time as well. Are you comfortable with nothing in the contingency fund? Yeah, so I wrote that down too.
Mayor. One of the things we have to figure out is what we're going to do overall with respect to revenue. So I think that's,
Exactly.
you know, that'll play into whatever we think is going to be there. So-
I think there's a bunch of, the way I view this, in my opinion anyway, is there's a bunch of just questions or outstanding little items we need to follow up on. Because then I think once we determine what all those expenditures are and need to be, then, as you said, Alderman Brett, we can go back and take a look at the revenue. So these are just, this is just the review. Yeah, Fund 30.
That first sheet's just like a summary page.
Mhm.
The second sheet is the revenues for Fund 30.
Okay, so any questions in general on Fund 30?
Just as a check, and I think we talked about this, if we met with the county, have you gone back and talked to them about what they're budgeting for combination taxes and for, just to get a, since they're getting great.
No,
Not that we're going to put that in there, but I sure hate to have them thinking, you know, somebody pointed out that they put 2 million in there, we put 5 million in there, and people are like.
Right. Yeah, I have not checked that. It's a good idea. I don't know if it would be divided up by town in their budget, or if they would just have a total accommodation tax. I don't know how they have that played
No,
out.
we've had a very terrible word. We've had a very fortunate year in terms of rentals and everything else in terms of tax collections, and it's reflected in the budget, so.
Would you mind just emailing Ms. Russell and asking her?
And that may not continue as hearty as it was, because people are back at work, and kids are back at school. So.
I don't have any questions on Fund 30. The sandbag repair, we just carried that forward again. Go ahead, sir.
I might have been distracted a moment ago.
Right now, the
Caitlin, I just want a clarification on the Fund 30 summary page there, future projects. Did you already mention that?
I didn't.
I lost track there, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
2.4 million, that's the excess in Fund 30 at the end of this fiscal year. And so that would be the amount that we would be paying the USDA to pay the principal down on the loan, correct?
Yes, that's essentially our contingency for Fund 30. So if all of that went to the fund balance, then yes, that would, if it's an excess over the 5 million at the end of the year, then that goes to pay off the USDA loan.
And what did Mr. Carter advise you? Because I remember I was kind of confused in something I heard that he advised the town on as far as the 2.4 million and paying down the principal.
I'm not, I don't know. I'm not sure. If you're
Okay.
to,
I thought I heard him say that he didn't recommend paying it this year, and I didn't understand why.
well, the 2.4, so that's for next fiscal year. So we don't have that this fiscal year.
Yeah.
But we have 784.
Right.
So that's what we should be paying down. I'm sorry. That's what we should be paying down this year, right?
But it's not over 5 million.
Right, and I don't have those audit figures in front of me for what's in that fund balance right now, but it was really just shy over the $5 million mark. And so I think that's why he was recommending not to pay this year. We would have to revisit with
Just a
him.
clarification, Mike, I think that the reason he recommended that is we're gonna have to borrow money because of FEMA reimbursement. And so he thought maybe we could get a waiver on that because it means, remember, we have to pre-fund the FEMA stuff coming in this fall.
Right.
And so he was saying, hey, conserve your cash, go to them and say, we're only gonna use this, so we don't have to borrow more than that. I thought that was why he said not to pay stuff.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. But we still,
That's a legitimate use for that money through the.
just to clarify that we've got 4.5 million in the sinking fund as of this year.
Yes,
And we've made 3 or 4 years of $90,000
yes, reserve
reserve.
payment.
So we're not over 5 million?
We are, it's different, and I don't know how
Okay.
to explain it very well, but we are over the $5 million mark in total. But we can't pay off of that amount, I don't think. I need to revisit that.
Well, it may be that our total reserve, I think you told us before, is around 10 million, maybe because the way we're doing the FEMA payments and so forth, the way you're tracking that, we might not have officially 5 million.
Yeah, in our total we
Okay.
have in our trust accounts, while it is over 10 million, I think we're closer to 11 to 12 at this point. Some of that is the general fund balance as well. So
Right.
there's a division there. So not all of that is going to be going towards the USDA.
All right.
So I think at this point, what I'd like to do is just review what I have as outstanding items. So if we miss anything. So paid parking for the north end, are we okay as a board with that staying right where it is? Or Caitlin has it? Or do we want that moved?
So just so I understand, we have 600,000 in all parking going into 30 and only 100 in.
So actually, 750 is what we have. in
Yes.
park.
I
Okay.
apologize. I said 6 earlier.
So we're okay?
I'm okay with that as a placeholder.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Moving the 100.
No,
Put
leaving
it
the
on
hundred.
there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The
Nobody
next-
wanted to say it, but I did.
The next item on here, I'm sorry, Tom, I'm gonna try to put this on, is the, and I won't call it an increase to the board salaries, I'll call it a restatement of the board, reinstating the board salaries. So we just need to decide as a board what is the direction on that. So do we want to just go around and say what we want to do? Because we have to give direction if there's going to be any changes. I don't want last minute changes on the Caitlin. We need to be able to vote next week on the thing. So Susan, what do you
I
want to do?
think we should keep it as is.
Okay. Mr. Grant?
I think that given the deficit that we're seeing right now, we should probably be looking at a tax increase, in which case I think that
That's my reason as well.
Given the fact that we're probably gonna end up having these taxes this year, I would say we leave it where it is as well, except I think that the mayor pro tem should work for free.
Okay.
I would say
For free.
Okay.
They
And
said
like-
3 months.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to leave it as is, correct?
Actually, I did 1 year, 2 years, year and
Did
a
you want to
half.
leave it as is?
I want to leave it as is.
Okay, so
Done.
we could bring that back down.
$21,000.
All right, so the planning board helped that I have that staff is gonna get together and talk about that. So that's not something we can give direction on today.
Okay.
Caitlin is going to reach out to the insurance company and just get us information on what our current coverage is, so we can do that. Fund 12, we are going to fund with 291,960 for the South End Safety Building. And we're also going to move, I think it was 45, what was actually, you wanted to do 90, but the
1 cent.
yeah, so this 42,800 that we have for capital improvements under fire for the engine, we wanted to move that over, but increase it to 97,320.
Increase it or add 97?
No, just
to it?
increase it to that number.
Okay.
Caitlin's gonna check on the salaries for the fire department. Fund 10, Caitlin's gonna break out planning and the board of adjustments into 2 line items. Caitlin, this is all Caitlin. Caitlin's gonna check with Ms. Russell on occupancy taxes just to make sure our numbers seem solid based on what they're budgeting. And you are also gonna check with Mr. Carter about the balance for as it relates to the LGC loan. Those are all the items I had. Did anybody else make any notes that they wanted checked?
I just have one question, and I'm sure it's checked every time, but when we have a line item and we budget $1,000, and then we put the budget for $20,000 again, do we go back through and at the end of the year actually see how much we actually spent? And
I do, yes, ma'am, yeah, I go, it's a long process.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure
So I
it
go
is.
through
I just
each
was wondering
line
if there's
item.
anywhere we
Yes,
trim.
Yes,
Does
yes.
It looks like you've already done that.
yeah, I tried to as best I could.
So the only other question I would have then, based on Fund 12, is Mayor Pro Tem, are you requesting a 4-cent townwide increase specifically to go into that fund? Or are we thinking that we're gonna be able to balance this without an increase? Do you have a
And I
thought?
think that's the other point we need to have taken. Now we've been through the budget and we have all the amendments and adjustments that we made. But we need to decide how much we're going to have to, well, hopefully not raise taxes, but it sounds like we are going to have to raise taxes. How much we would have to raise the general fund tax to balance the general fund.
So the one thing I want to make sure is considered in that, and I don't know what we would be comfortable as a board with, but again, we have no contingency fund. So I think we probably need to have a couple $100,000 in as a contingency. And I don't know, Caitlin, if you'd be able to tell us what we used to have in the contingency fund.
I can pull, if we want to take a 5-minute recess, I could pull up my computer and at least put in some of these numbers quickly. And then we could get somewhat of an idea of what we would need for an increase.
And you had a shortfall in there too. So it's
I know that's what I'm,
not just
right.
one.
Do we have, not on the piece of paper, do we have funds that today available to us that are for a contingency? Have we built up a backup fund?
If some disaster were to happen, there is the option, I think like was used in the past, where we could reach out to the USDA and possibly use our sinking fund money. They let us do that in the past, if an emergency were to happen today.
Okay. I just want to make sure that
We
there
do
is.
have funds available to us, but to see a blank line item for contingency makes me a little bit nervous, even if it's $100,000.
Well, I'm just looking at it and saying, I don't think that we can, it depends on what we call contingency. We can't go to them and say, oh, we had a $50,000 thing here. Can we waive us? If we're going back to the LGC or to the USDA every time we have $50,000, that's not going to play. I don't think. And Tom, you dealt with that. That's just not what, if it's something where it's millions of dollars, that's a different deal than going back because we didn't plan for $100,000.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess and let Caitlin bring her laptop up and see what the numbers look
Yeah,
like?
just one more comment about the contingency fund. I agree that we should have a contingency fund, because if we approve the budget as is, we're basically handing the town manager no flexibility. You can't tell each department, head, well, this is your budget, this is what you said you wanted. And so you didn't see the future with the crystal ball like it turned out. So the town manager needs some flexibility in the general fund budget. It just makes sense.
I mean, or budget amendments happen, but I would like to be able to have that there just in case there is an emergency.
Yeah, because it goes overall into the consideration of what the tax levy needs to be.
Exactly.
Well, a budget plan is a forecasted plan based on past and future expectations. But again, we do amendments when we have to. It's understood. It's, we're looking at a snapshot in time to build this thing. And so it changes, things happen. And it's understood that if we have to, we make changes. Right, we gotta have it to set a rate.
So why don't we take a 5-minute recess? It's 2:36 now.
I move we take a 5-minute recess.
All in favor?
So, when I reduced the board salary amounts and then moved the fire truck allocation over into Fund 12, that leaves us deficient, a $35,000 deficiency. So if we were going to put 4 cents worth, if that's the recommendation, into Fund 12, so 3 for the public safety building, 1 for the fire truck, then you would still be shy $35,000. So if you raise the taxes 5 cents, that would be a total increase of $486,600, with $389,280 going towards 12, leaving the $97,000, which is a penny left to allocate for Fund 10. That would be, I know these are a lot of numbers, but that would cover the 35,000 deficiency and put 62,000 in contingency.
Just so I can walk through this, the reason there's only a $35,000 deficiency is because you moved everything.
I moved the fire truck to 12 and I reduced the board salaries.
Right, what I'm saying though is the total deficiency is almost 400,000, not 35,000.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Fund 10
So when
deficiency.
you're saying 5 cents, my mental math was a penny is 100,000.
Yes,
Okay, and so it's worth 5 cents leaves us an excess of only about $35,000, and that doesn't include the mayor's contingency.
5 cents leaves us in excess of $62,000.
But that would be the only contingency left to be 62.
But the
Yes.
other thing it doesn't include is whatever conclusion or decision, recommendation that the town manager and the town planning director come up with for the planning department. So it's still not, we're not there yet.
Right. And I'd still like to revisit the fire department salaries, and there was a few other things on my list that I think might change that a little bit. So, but that gives you at least a ballpark of some
So-
numbers.
So we're looking at-
My next, but that's not gonna possibly more, so my next recommendation to the board would be to allow Caitlin to, rework what she needs to rework. I don't believe we're at a point right now where we can vote on this next week, so how much notice has to be required to be able to get back together one more time later this week and just review? I don't think we'll need 2 hours, but
You don't adjourn the meeting. You,
we just continue the meeting.
yeah,
okay.
we suspend it, that's not the right word.
Continue.
It's just continue.
Just continue.
So if I
And you're already
continue,
gonna set one for the 25th.
yeah, my concern is, we have it scheduled to vote on
You recess.
next week.
You recess advice, adjourn.
And right, so next, I think it's next Tuesday, we have the notice, the public hearing to be able to vote on this. My goal and desire would be that the board is fully comfortable with this prior to that meeting, so we're not having this level of conversation there. So I think we need to get back together later this week. I don't know if anybody has their calendars, what Thursday or Friday was it like?
Thursday, you have the town lunch.
Yeah.
4:10.
And I have it on also board meeting that night, so, what about, could we do Friday morning? Mike, would that work for you?
This Friday morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, how about we do 10 o'clock here? Does that give you enough time? Is that all right?
Can I add one thing to that, Mayor?
Mhm.
When you're coming back to us, this would be you and the town manager, when we're looking at this and trying to get an idea. I would like some kind of recommendation as to what tax increase is necessary. And I don't mean the recommendation just says, oh, we've done all this stuff and basically gave us guidance. And so it's 4.3 cents. Would ask that you give some thought to, if we're going to raise taxes, I don't want to be doing it every year because we just did this, we didn't raise enough money. Okay, I'd like people in the town need to know that if we're going to do the public safety building and all those other things, that we're not going to be coming back for them. Okay, I don't think it's a fair way to treat this and give people an idea of what's what's going on. So
Well, I kind of agree with that, but you might recall that our public safety building looks like it's gonna come in around $7 million right now. And the 3 cents that I proposed isn't gonna cover half of the debt service per year. But I didn't think we wanted to raise, I don't feel like we should be raising taxes that full amount yet, because it is uncertain. We don't know if it's 7 million or what it is, but at least we're getting started down that road. So I'm just saying, on that particular line, we may have to increase the tax.
that's fine, but I guess when I'm talking about it, I think you brought it up and Tom brought it up, is if we're looking at planning, okay, let's get some idea of not going to contingency fund, but if it's a public safety fund or something like that, that instead of every time we need to go out and say, oh, we didn't plan for this. I mean, I think we all agree the fire station should have been replaced years ago. Right? And so we want to stay away from, I believe, that kind of stuff. We're constantly coming out, right? And I'm not saying you have to do it all, Mike. I'm saying, no, let's not go in and kid ourselves. If we think we're going to have to raise it 2 cents the next year, you know,
I think,
I think that's a bad message to send to people.
I think all we're trying to say is if Caitlin comes back with a recommendation on what she thinks is gonna make us whole here, we as a board have to give some additional thought to what else we've got planned townwide.
Yes.
But at least we'll know that we're covered from a budget
Right.
perspective.
But I was going back to your idea about voting on something, and I'm just saying, if they come back to us and they recommend X, okay, we're gonna have a long discussion about whether it's X plus 1 or X plus 2.
And
or
that's
X
why we're
minus
gonna
1.
recess and we'll have to have that conversation on Friday, so if everybody could give it some thought. I think that's what we need
That's
to
my
do.
point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're gonna be in a circle conversation again.
Okay. I mean, it's necessary, but I can tell you, there's people in the tax districts are gonna be.
And actually, that would be my only other question before we move off of the budget is in the beach fund. We first of all, we as a board know we need to make a decision on the federal project. But right now, we don't have, we've got the FEMA project planned next year and that's gonna hit phase 1. Also the category G, but there's literally nothing for 2, 3, and 4 because I know they're COBRA. I already understand that. But should we also be starting to build up some funds here? Because if you get rid of COBRA, Alderman Leonard, we don't have any money to do anything in 2, 3, and 4.
Well, you know, I kind of always looked at some reason things change, and I'm trying to keep careful. Because it's all, it's all about the project.
Well, but just take that aside, that we still don't have any funds left to do 2, 3, and 4 because of COBRA. I'm just saying.
Well, actually, we do. We've got parking. We've got
Parking
our
money,
parking
okay.
revenue. I think is honestly, our beach fund is in pretty good shape in terms of fund generation. We pay parking.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's not in a red agreement.
Yeah, as long as everybody's comfortable with that.
It's,
What
yeah,
is?
it's the ifs.
I don't want to go too far down that path, but I just wanted to bring that up as a board.
And you know, because been thinking about that, and thought, well, you know, what we need to do, and then really thought, and you know, no matter what we do for beach fund, the first thing we have to do is finish the debt service on phase 5. But beyond that, I think that okay, parking.
But I just add one thing to that. I agree with Tom. If you look at, we are in a static position right now, no new debt, without anything else. And at some point get the USDA loan, we've got between $3 and $5 million a year to put into the beaches. That's a pretty significant contribution every year to be able to put, and half our budget is the beach.
And a little more capital with the LGC, if we have to borrow money for the safety. building.
Absolutely.
Okay, then we need to,
Not a term.
no, not adjourn. We're going to recess this part of the meeting, but we do also need to go into closed session. So do we have to come back out?
Just go to closed session, then you come back out and recess the break.
Okay.
Come back out and regular session. So the
So we need a
Motion to
motion.
go into closed session.
You need to discuss the reason why you're going into the closed session for the general statutes, which one?
Personnel and legal issues.
Personal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
That's what he said.
Brian? All right.
Am I back on?
Cool.
Oh, wait, sorry. That wasn't intentional.
You good? So do I have a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second? All in
Second.
favor? Aye. So no motion, no action was taken in closed session. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna recess this meeting and we're going to get back together at the end of next week to take one more pass through the budget. All right, so meeting adjourned? No, not adjourned.
Recess.
Recess.